Hello everybody. Today we're going to be talking about online scams and the impact on people. Hello everyone. I am joined today by Jorij Abraham, who is the Managing Director of the Global Anti-Scam Alliance. Jorij, hello and thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me, Emily. I look forward to our discussion.
That's great. Tell me about the Global Anti-Scam Alliance. What is it? What does it do? Why was it formed?
The Global Anti-Scam Alliance, or in short, GASA, is a non-profit organization. Our mission is to help consumers worldwide not get scammed, and we do that in several ways. We do research. Most well-known study we do is the Global State of Scam virtually, where we bring together law enforcement, consumer protection organizations, policymakers, and the commercial sector to share insights on the latest scams and also how we can fight them better. And finally, once per year, we are organizing our Global Anti-Scam Summit, where we bring everybody together physically from more than 70 different countries. And we really try to define new solutions on how we can counter online scams.
That's amazing because there are quite a few organisations, aren't there, Yuri, that are doing things around cybersecurity. Is GASA, the Global Anti-Scam Alliance, the only organisation that really has that consumer focus as well as the security and law enforcement side?
We do see there are a lot of organizations, a lot of nonprofits very concerned about cybersecurity. I think we are one of the few who really focuses on the consumer and online scams targeting consumers. There are more, especially in Roman scams. There are several nonprofits and charities who help victims of online Roman scams to recover because it's one of the most heinous kinds of scams you can imagine.
Mm. Yeah, can you tell me a little bit about, the scale of the problem? Because there's lots of different ways of measuring things, aren't there? And some, according to some measures, the levels of, say, online abuse or DNS abuse are going down. What's your view and what's the data telling you about the scale of the problem?
Scams are definitely on the rise. I mean,
Mm.
it has been going on since the rise of the internet. I mean, we could have foreseen in the year 2000 that online crime, including online scams, would be a big problem. But we see a sharp rise, and of course, Corona accelerated the numbers of online scams. But well, in our report we published last year, the Global State of Scam report, we estimate that the amount of money being lost is about $55 billion, reported by more than 300 million people. But that's only, how should I say, the tip of the iceberg, because on average, only 7% of the consumers actually report an online scam to the authorities. So we only see a fraction of what's really going on. But what we do see is that it continues to rise. We also run a website called scamadvisor.com, and our traffic grew to more than 5.5 million unique visitors per month, which is about 60% increase compared to the year before. So definitely it's growing.
That's amazing. So the $55 billion figure of losses is only based on the 7% that actually report scams. So it really would be a tip of the iceberg in terms of losses. I mean, that is a huge amount, isn't it? And yet, do you find, I mean, we were finding when we were talking to consumers who've been victims of scams that they almost never mention the police. They never mention reporting. They sort of seem to try to deal with it themselves. Is that your experience as well?
Unfortunately, yes. I mean, scams are a weird kind of crime. It's the only crime you fall for. You are giving money, giving your information to a criminal. And unfortunately, it's still seen in the media and in the general perception that, yeah, you're the one doing it, so it's your fault.
Mm.
But of course, it's the criminal's fault. I mean, he is deceiving you. And very honestly, we did several studies and they all confirm that anybody can get scammed, high education, low education, rich or poor. Uh, just it has only one moment of weakness, one moment of not being paying attention, and you get scammed because I mean, we're getting so many scam messages now every day that well, I would nearly say if you haven't been scammed, you probably haven't lived.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it can happen to anybody.
Yeah. Yeah. It's sort of like you've either been scammed or you haven't been scammed yet, it would seem to be. So, I mean, are you seeing changes? I mean, the we always see that criminal behavior constantly evolves, and you mentioned the pandemic, and we saw a lot of sort of like delivery scams and text-based scams and things like that. What sort of new developments and trends are you seeing from your scam advisor and Global Anti-Scam Alliance perspective?
We see that they're very rapidly adapting the new technology. I mean, you've heard it before, the deep fakes, the fake voices, fake photos. It's no longer theory. We come across them
Mm.
regularly being used by scammers. I actually recently had my own deep fake experience a few weeks ago. I was approached via LinkedIn by a developer from Serbia. We are always looking for more developers, and seemed a nice guy. His GitHub technical account proved to be very interesting. So I did a job interview, and his camera wasn't turned on. So I asked, "Could you turn on your camera?" And he said, "Well, my camera is not working on my desktop. Give me 5 minutes, and I connect again via my laptop." And indeed, he did. But something was off, and after a few minutes, I noticed. Well, he claims to be from Serbia. He looks Eastern European, but his accent is Asian. So I asked, would you mind taking off your glasses?" And at that moment, the connection broke, and he never came back. And the scam was, I first had to pay him $1,000 to start working for me. And I mean, it's already there, and my biggest concern is that we can no longer expect consumers to recognize scams. They're becoming too good, and they're using the latest technology.
So it feels really like all of the odds are stacked against the consumer here. You know, you've just mentioned deep fakes and the rapid adaptation to that new technology that the criminal community, if you like, are benefiting from. So what can people do to protect themselves? What if you've been in this environment and working here for a long time, if you could get some things done to make things better, what would they be?
Um, well, at the Global Anti-Scam Alliance, we at our last summit we defined 10 recommendations to turn the tide on scams. I will not go into them now, but in general, it's about working together internationally. Our biggest problems with cybercrime in general and online scams specifically is that it's an international crime. The professional scammers never ever scam in their own country because then they might get caught. As soon as they do it across the border, the chances of getting caught drop to zero. And that's what we are focusing on, facilitating international data sharing, cooperation to catch the criminals. Because once we start to catch them, we hope that the number of scams will actually start dropping.
And going back to the consumer, which, as you noted, is your primary focus, what would be your advice if you could be on the shoulder of consumers as they're trying to cope with all of these different ways of being scammed? What would be your advice to consumers to protect themselves and also in the unfortunate event that they do get scammed?
Um, First of all, I mean, the rule, if it's too good to be true, it probably is, still applies. And you have to be aware as a consumer that the number of online scams and frauds is increasing rapidly, and you have to protect yourself. And I always recommend that if you have any doubts, talk to friends and families, let them help you, talk to the police, do your research, and especially take time. Scammers don't
Mm.
like you to think. So stop, think, and only then act, and act carefully. So that's regarding consumers. Regarding victims, I always say it's not your fault. Anybody can get scammed. Like I mean, anybody can have an accident. It just happens, and uh, do share it with law enforcement, because in the end, law enforcement needs your report to act, and it might not be your report, but if it allows them maybe to connect the dots and start investigating a scam network. Please do share, because the more you talk with friends and family, the more others are warned as well, and realize that they have to be more careful. But it's definitely not the victim's fault. It's the criminals doing it, and you are only a victim.
Thank you very much, Jorij Abraham from the Global Anti-Scam Alliance. Thank you very much for sharing your insights today on online scams.